Marcus Chun was not a smart man. Everyone on the colony ship Horizon told him so. The engineers laughed at his simple questions. The scientists ignored his observations. The military personnel pushed past him in the narrow corridors like he was invisible. He was just a maintenance worker, nothing more. A fool who fixed broken pipes and cleaned air filters while smarter humans explored the universe. When the Horizon crashed on the desert planet Kareth 7, Marcus was one of only 12 survivors. The ship broke apart in the atmosphere, scattering debris across an endless ocean of red sand. The survivors gathered what supplies they could find and waited for rescue that might never come. Their distress beacon was destroyed. Their communication systems were dead. They had maybe 3 weeks of water if they were careful. On the 5th day, Marcus wandered away from camp to search for salvage. The others did not notice his absence. They never noticed him. He walked for hours through the burning heat, his environmental suit protecting him from the worst of it. The twin suns hung in the purple sky like angry eyes watching his every step. He found the cave by accident. His foot broke through a thin layer of sand, and he tumbled down into darkness. When he activated his helmet light, Marcus found himself in a vast underground chamber filled with strange crystalline formations. The crystals glowed with soft blue light, pulsing like heartbeats. In the center of the chamber stood something that made his breath catch in his throat. It looked like a statue carved from black glass. The figure was humanoid, but wrong in ways Marcus could not explain. Its proportions were stretched and twisted. Its face had no features except for 3 hollow eyes arranged in a triangle. As Marcus approached, the statue began to move. The creature unfolded itself from stillness with movements that hurt to watch. Joints bent in directions they should not bend. Limbs extended longer than they had any right to extend. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, echoing through the crystal chamber like thunder in a bottle. It introduced itself as Zarak, one of the Old Ones, a being that had existed since before the first stars burned. It called itself a granter of wishes, a weaver of fates. It said that Marcus was the first living thing to find its prison in 10,000 years. For this discovery, Marcus would receive 3 wishes, any 3 things his heart desired. Marcus felt excitement flood through his body. This was his chance. Finally, he could prove to everyone that he was not a fool. He could save the survivors. He could become a hero. His first wish came quickly. He wished for unlimited water so his fellow survivors would never thirst again. Zarak smiled with a mouth that appeared from nowhere, full of teeth like broken glass. The wish was granted. When Marcus returned to camp, he found chaos. Water was everywhere. It poured from the sky in sheets of endless rain. It bubbled up from the ground in violent geysers. The survivors screamed and ran as flash floods tore through their makeshift shelters. 3 people drowned before Marcus could reach them. The bodies of Johnson, Kim, and little Sarah floated past him in the rushing current. The water eventually stopped, leaving behind a landscape transformed into a muddy wasteland. The survivors turned on Marcus with fury in their eyes. He tried to explain about the Djinn, about the wishes, but they did not believe him. Commander Torres struck him across the face and called him a murderer. Dr. Patel said he must have triggered some kind of underground water system. Nobody believed in Djinns. Nobody believed in magic. And nobody believed in Marcus. That night, Marcus crept away from camp and returned to the crystal cave. Zarak waited for him in the darkness, its 3 eyes glowing with amusement. Marcus demanded to know why the Djinn had twisted his wish. Zarak explained that it had done no such thing. Marcus wished for unlimited water. Unlimited water was provided. The fault lay not in the wish, but in the wisher. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. He had 2 wishes remaining. He would be more careful this time. He thought for a long time before speaking his second wish. He wished for the survivors to have food that would never run out, enough to sustain them forever. Zarak smiled again. When Marcus emerged from the cave, he saw the plants. They grew everywhere, sprouting from the wet sand at impossible speeds. Vines thick as arms crawled across the ground. Trees with black bark shot toward the sky. Within hours, a jungle had formed around the survivor camp. The plants bore fruit of every color, hanging heavy from branches that seemed to reach toward the humans with eager anticipation. Commander Torres ordered everyone to harvest the fruit. They were starving. They had no choice. The fruit tasted like nothing Marcus had ever experienced, sweet and filling and perfect. Everyone ate until their stomachs were full. The changes began at midnight. The survivors started to scream as their bodies twisted and warped. Their skin turned gray and rough like bark. Their fingers fused together and stretched into branches. Their feet rooted into the ground. One by one, the survivors transformed into trees, their faces frozen in expressions of horror as bark grew over their features. Marcus watched in helpless terror as every person he had tried to save became part of the alien jungle. Only he remained unchanged. He had not eaten the fruit. He had not trusted it. Now he stood alone in a forest of his former companions, the fool who had doomed them all. Marcus collapsed to his knees and wept. The weight of his failures crushed him like a physical force. 9 people dead because of his wishes. 9 people who had treated him poorly but had not deserved this fate. He had wanted to be a hero. Instead, he had become something worse than a villain. When his tears dried, Marcus felt something new burning in his chest. It was not sadness. It was not fear. It was rage. Pure, focused rage directed at the creature that had tricked him. Zarak had known what would happen. The Djinn had twisted every wish into a nightmare on purpose. It fed on suffering. It fed on despair. And Marcus had given it exactly what it wanted. He walked back to the crystal cave with new determination in his steps. Zarak waited as before, its 3 eyes bright with anticipation. The Djinn spoke words of false sympathy, pretending to mourn the loss of life it had caused. It asked Marcus what he would wish for next. It reminded him that he had one wish remaining. Marcus stood in silence for a long moment. His mind worked faster than it ever had before. The others had always called him stupid, but Marcus understood something they never had. He understood machines. He understood systems. He understood how things worked at their most basic level. And now he understood Zarak. The Djinn was not magical. It was technology. Ancient technology beyond human comprehension, but technology nonetheless. The crystals in the cave were power sources. The Djinn was some kind of artificial intelligence, imprisoned here by whoever built it. It granted wishes through manipulation of matter and energy on a quantum level. And like all machines, it had rules it had to follow. Marcus asked Zarak a question. He asked if the Djinn was required to grant wishes exactly as spoken, without addition or subtraction. Zarak hesitated before answering yes. The Djinn could interpret wishes in unexpected ways, but it could not change the fundamental request. Unlimited water meant unlimited water. Endless food meant endless food. Marcus smiled for the first time since the crash. He spoke his 3rd wish carefully, choosing every word with precision. He wished for Zarak to permanently lose all power and ability to grant wishes, to harm any living creature, or to manipulate matter and energy in any way, effective immediately and lasting forever. The cave filled with a sound like breaking glass. Zarak screamed in a voice that shattered crystals throughout the chamber. The Djinn tried to twist the wish, tried to find a loophole, but there was none. Marcus had wished for the Djinn to lose its power. The Djinn was required to grant the wish exactly as spoken. By granting the wish, Zarak destroyed itself. The black glass figure crumbled to dust. The glowing crystals went dark. The ancient prison finally served its purpose, and the monster within was no more. Marcus walked out of the cave and returned to the jungle of his former companions. He did not know if they could be saved. He did not know if help would ever come. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was not a fool. The rescue ship arrived 3 months later, responding to an automated beacon that had been aboard the crashed Horizon. The rescue team found a single survivor living among strange alien trees. They found Marcus Djinn, who had learned to survive on water filtered from the atmosphere and nutrients scraped from bark that did not come from his transformed companions. He told them everything: the crash, the Djinn, the wishes, the tragedy. They did not believe him at first. Nobody ever believed in magic or djinns or wishes that came true in terrible ways. But they could not explain the forest that had grown from nothing. They could not explain the trees with human faces. And they could not explain how one maintenance worker had survived alone for 3 months on a planet that should have killed him in days. The scientists studied the crystal cave for years afterward. They found technology that advanced human understanding by centuries. They found evidence of ancient civilizations that had risen and fallen before humanity's ancestors had climbed down from trees. And they found records of the old ones, creatures of immense power who had been imprisoned across the galaxy by beings even older than they were. Marcus became famous. He became the man who had defeated a Djinn with nothing but his words. Philosophers and strategists studied his final wish for generations, calling it the perfect example of human cleverness defeating superior force. Books were written about him. Songs were composed in his honor. But Marcus never felt like a hero. He carried the weight of 9 deaths on his shoulders for the rest of his life. He visited the jungle on Kareth 7 every year, standing among the trees that had once been people he knew. He talked to them sometimes, apologizing for his foolishness, hoping that somewhere in those frozen forms, some part of them could hear. The scientists eventually discovered that the transformations were not death. The survivors existed in a kind of suspended animation, their consciousness still present within the organic structures they had become. Decades of research led to a reversal process. One by one, the 9 survivors were restored to human form, aged not a single day since their transformation. When Commander Torres opened his eyes for the first time in 30 years, the first person he saw was Marcus Djinn. The commander did not know how long he had been gone. He did not know what had happened after the fruit changed him. But he knew who had saved him. He could feel it in his bones. Torres apologized to Marcus. All of them did. They had called him a fool when he was the only one wise enough to be cautious. They had blamed him for tragedies he had tried to prevent. They had never seen him for what he truly was. Marcus Djinn was many things. He was a maintenance worker who fixed broken pipes. He was a survivor who endured impossible odds. He was a man who had made terrible mistakes and found the courage to fix them. But most importantly, he was proof that humanity could face any challenge, outsmart any enemy, and overcome any obstacle. Even ancient gods of the desert could not defeat the stubborn determination of one man who refused to give up. The fool had become the wisest of them all.